Hi, this is John Allen, the editor of Crux. Welcome to another exclusive Crux video feature here on our YouTube page. You know, if you are like me, that is, if you are like the vast majority of Catholics around the world, your life is significantly different and better because of the impact of religious men and women, members of religious orders. Maybe you were taught by a community of nuns in grade school or high school. Maybe a community of religious priests staffed the parish you grew up in. Maybe just at some important point in your life, either one of the high notes or the low notes, you felt the need to reach out to someone for spiritual insight, for pastoral guidance, and that someone was a religious priest or a religious sister. Point is, we owe these people huge. All of us Catholics in the trenches do. But what we don't often think about is what happens to these religious when they retire. I suppose most of us probably assume their communities just take care of them, and of course that's true. But a 2016 study found that by the year 2030, religious communities are going to be looking at almost a $10 billion deficit in trying to care for the needs of their retired members. And the question is, of course, where is that money going to come from? The answer is it has to come from all of us who have benefited so greatly from the imprint of religious men and women have an obligation to step up to make sure that when they're coming to the end, when that service is over, somebody is there to make sure that they have a dignified life. We have with us today somebody who is working, actually leading the charge on that critically important cause. It is Sister Stephanie Still. She is the executive director of the National Religious Retirement Office. That is an effort sponsored by religious communities of men and women and also by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. She is a member of the Sisters of Presentation of San Francisco. Sister Stephanie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
All right, so Sister Stephanie, you are in charge of the effort to raise funds for retired religious. It is called the Retirement Fund for Religious. Why don't you tell us what exactly that is and how it helps in the trenches with this critically important issue of trying to make sure that retired religious are taken care of?
Okay, thank you. In the 1970s and 1980s, it started to become part of the national, not just the church, but the national conversation that religious communities were underfunded for retirement. And through the efforts of various entities in the church, including the Catholic bishops, the National Religious Retirement Office was formed, and the Retirement Fund for Religious Collection was begun in all the archdioceses and dioceses of the United States. So for the last 30 years, we have been taking up an annual collection called the Retirement Fund for Religious to help with the retirement needs of men and women religious. That's sisters, brothers, and priests who belong to religious orders.
And now I know the Retirement Fund for Religious has been around since 1988. So a kind of common sense question that many Catholics might ask would be, well, like, why is it still necessary? I mean, hasn't the need been met in these intervening 20 years? So, what's the answer to that? Is it simply that the need continues to grow exponentially, beyond our ability to meet it, or why is the fund still necessary?
Well, the fund is still necessary because we're trying to make up for all those years where men and women religious worked for stipends, which were very small amounts usually. And so they didn't have the opportunity for most of their years of service here in the United States to get lay parity salaries or to put away a large amount of money or any amount of money for retirement needs. So that is kind of the setting off point for the need. And then as we continue, women and men religious in the United States are aging, as is everyone else, and the vocations have not kept up with the number of sisters and priests and brothers who are aging and are in need of religious retirement funds and funds for their retirement. So the need is continuing as we look at men and women religious who are needing acute care, end-of-life care, just any kind of pastoral care and health care that their congregations are trying to maintain and facilitate for them. And the funds from the Religious Retirement Office, we were able to give $25 million last year and the year before. That's our pattern to institutes that qualify. But those funds are not enough to meet a particular institute's needs. So it's meant to be supplemental. They have a retirement fund to the salaries of their sisters or brothers, and to maybe other kinds of resources they might have, like government programs or any kind of fundraising they do for themselves. So the need is huge, as you mentioned. The last few years, the care cost for men and women religious over the age of 70 has been over $1 billion a year. So you can see that there's an enormous amount of resources going into caring for these men and women religious.
Now, sister, I got to imagine that the idea of trying to take care of retired religious men and women is not a difficult pitch to make at the Catholic grassroots. I mean, you know, my experience is that at the grassroots, in the trenches, in the pews, there is an enormous atmosphere of love around religious men and women. I mean, you know, you see that in multiple ways. One of the more recent examples was the way the Catholic grassroots in America reacted when the announcement came down the pike that there was going to be a Vatican investigation or visitation or, you know, examination anyway. Of women religious in America. And Catholics, you know, at the grassroots may not have known a lot about the ins and outs of that, the details of it. What they did know was that they didn't like the idea of anybody messing with the nuns, because we just, you know, we love them to death. What is your experience when you and others on your team go around and make appeals? I mean, do you find people just tend to step up, tend to respond when they know what the need is?
Yes, and I want to express great gratitude to the U.S. Catholics who over the last 30 years have been stepping up just like you said. And as you said in your opening, I think many U.S. Catholics have a deep respect and gratitude for men and women religious, whether it was through their education or some other experience they've had with them. And when I go out speaking, I often have people come up to me and say, well, you know, my family went through a really bad period when I was young. Maybe a parent died or something happened. And, you know, the sisters at such and such elementary school went ahead and educated me and my siblings for free. So we hear a lot of stories like that. And I think those stories continue in Catholic education. So there is this reservoir of goodwill and gratitude amongst U.S. Catholics. And that has kept the collection results around 25 or $30 million a year for the last 30 years. I mean, some years have been higher and some have been lower, but we get this tremendous response from U.S. Catholics, and we're very grateful. And we're very grateful that the U.S. Catholic bishops have extended the collection for 10 years because they understand that there is still a need and that it's a vital role for everyone in the church to care for these men and women religious as they age. As you said in your opening, we need to give them a retirement with dignity and respect and compassion.
Now, despite that generosity that you just spoke of, people should not miss the point here that although $25 to $30 million is a big number, and it does speak volumes about how much American Catholics love and cherish their men and women religious, that's not meeting the entire need, right? I mean, there is unmet need out there, and it's important that we not become complacent, not think that the job has been done. If anything, that $25 to $30 million needs to grow, doesn't it?
Well, that would be great if it did. And I think going back to the figure I gave earlier, every year it's costing men and women religious congregations, institutes, $1 billion to care for their men and women over the age of 70. And that's statistics we gather every year through the various data that we receive. And so, again, what we give to institutes is meant to be a supplement, it's meant to help, but it doesn't meet the whole need. So you can also need to know that religious congregations are doing a lot of other practices and programs to help meet this need, whether it's enrolling their members in government programs, their own development needs. Some are looking at selling properties or other ways that they can raise funds to continue to care for their elder members.
All right. Well, listen, generally at Crux, I don't engage in editorializing. Our stock and trade is trying to be straight down the middle and keeping our opinions out of the stories we tell. But I'm going to grant myself a free pass on this one and engage in a little bit of editorial opinion. Folks, you just heard those numbers. Every year when this collection for retired religious has taken up, we all collectively step up to the tune of about $30 million, and that is terrific. That is commendable. It's another sign of the generosity of the U.S. Catholic community. But the need annually is $1 billion. And so 30 million is certainly not a drop in the bucket, but it doesn't come anywhere close to addressing the actual need that is out there. And this is a time when we really do need to step up. There are a lot of good causes out there, a lot of appeals, for whatever cash for charitable giving you may have on hand. And most of them are absolutely worthy. But this is a case in which we have not only a historical debt to pay off, but a personal debt. I dare say there isn't a single Catholic on the planet, and not one in this country, whose life has not been enriched, whose spiritual journey has not been contributed to in significant ways by men and women religious over the years. I say again, we owe these people, and we need to continue stepping up. And in fact, we need to step up in ever greater ways, because the very last thing we want is these people who were so critically important in making our lives rich and worthy and dignified, don't have a dignified set of circumstances waiting for them at the end of their careers and their ministries. So, Sister Stephanie, for everything that you and the National Religious Retirement Office do to make sure that that happens, on behalf of the whole Crux team and Catholics everywhere, I want to say a big thank you.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you to the U.S. Catholics and bishops for making this possible.
All right, so we have been speaking with Sister Stephanie Still of the National Religious Retirement Office. If you want information on the annual collection and other ways in which you might be able to be part of taking care of retired religious in this country, go to the website of the effort. It is retiredreligious.org. Once again, that is retiredreligious.org. You'll get all the information you need. Sister Stephanie, what's the date of the annual collection?
It's the second weekend in December, so it's the 9th and the 10th, and it's taken up in most archdioceses that weekend. Some dioceses or archdioceses take it up at a different time, but that's when most Catholics should be hearing about it in their parishes and getting the envelopes to contribute.
All right. Well, you heard her, folks. The collection is right around the corner for most of us, December 9th and 10th. When whoever is making the appeal in your parish explains the logic of it, please do be generous. Now, Sister Stephanie, unfortunately, I'm going to be in Rome on the 9th and 10th, so I won't actually be in my local parish here in Denver, but I promise you, I will find another way to make sure that I put my money where my mouth is, okay? That's a solemn promise from me to you.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, that was Sister Stephanie Still. This has been an exclusive video feature on the Crux YouTube page. Keep checking our YouTube page because quite often we bring these things to you, conversations with interesting Catholic personalities, newsmakers, movers and shakers, both here in the United States and around the world. I am John Allen, the editor of Crux, and until we talk again, you have a great day.